Hey guys, Percolator. In this video, we're going to explore what seems to be the most common topic in my comment section, which is single PC home labs. It seems a lot of people are interested in home lab, but would like to have one PC that does everything instead of two or more PCs doing all the tasks such as NAS and compute. This is a valid solution and something I have done in the past. There are many ways to achieve this, and I'm going to cover the most common ways I've seen people go about this and walk through the setup of these methods over the course of the next few videos. This will not be every single possible way, but it should get you moving in the correct direction. For software, we're going to be using many solutions over the next few videos. But in this video, we're going to start with the most simple solution, which is TrueNAS Scale. TrueNAS Scale is an out-of-the-box solution for what we're trying to achieve. It is mainly a NAS, but has great hypervisor functionality. It is not my first pick when it comes to a hypervisor, but it is very capable. To start, we're going to need some hardware. This hardware requirement should stay the same across all of the single PC home lab setups that I cover. The hardware needed is completely workload dependent. If say you would like to run a Jellyfin or Plex media server, you may want to look into an Intel processor with quick sync or a GPU. Whereas if you're using the home lab to save for certs, you may not care about having a powerful GPU and would rather have a higher core count CPU for more VMs. The hardware is mostly up to you, and I'd recommend researching the general requirements of the software that you would like to use to dictate what kind of hardware you would like to have. You must have a CPU that supports virtualization. Luckily, most do these days. Some general recommendations are a motherboard with many PCIe slots, as these can be used to add functionality to the PC later down the road. I would also suggest plenty of storage interfaces, whether that is M.2 slots or SATA ports. If you're going to virtualize your NAS, I would also highly recommend getting a PCIe to SATA card. These can be obtained at Amazon new for between $25 and $100 depending on how many SATA ports the card comes with. These cards allow you to pass through the entire card instead of individual drives. This makes the pass-through of the drives much more simple in my experience. These cards are great, however they are not required. If you plan on having tons of storage, I would suggest a good power supply with many SATA power connectors. I would stay away from SATA power splitters that are very cheap, as I have heard many people over the years say that they can be a fire hazard. As far as RAM goes, I would recommend getting as much RAM as you can reasonably get, and ECC if your motherboard and CPU support it. Alternatively, if you have a workload that is light and doesn't require a ton of storage, a mini PC or old laptop can work amazingly. My first home lab was a laptop of mine and allowed me to do everything from learn the basics of networking to host a Minecraft server for many years. It was a great solution for when I got started. However, they are limited when it comes to storage. If you think the hardware that you have is weak, just give it a try and leave a comment below about your experience and details about your hardware, so that you can help others and maybe inspire someone else to give their random hardware a go. The hardware that we're going to be using for today's video is on screen. I would not recommend copying this hardware as it is pretty old and would probably not be worth buying. There are much better alternatives to this. The only thing that I would recommend copying is the 4TB drives, as there's nothing amazing about them. They're just 4TB drives. However, 4TB drives are 4TB drives, and REDs are great for NASs. Other than that, everything here is pretty much not something I would seek out. There's not really anything here I could think of that I would seek out. It's a pretty good power supply. Other than that, nothing really matters here. Alternatives that I would look into, however, are HP small form factor PCs or Lenovo or Dell, whichever one. I just have the most experience with HP personally, so those are the ones I'm showing off. Something like this would be great. This is $60 and it is an i7 8700K or 8700, not K. And 24 gigs of RAM. This would be great for an NAS. I don't know exactly how many SATA ports it has. However, you could always add a SATA controller and you could always add some hard drives into it. It may not have support, but for 2 or 3 hard drives, however, you can make some things work. Say for instance, if you go SSDs, you can always just double side tape them into the inside of the case, and that will work completely fine, as SSDs have no moving parts, and double side tape is a pretty okay way of putting them in there for a cheap NAS. Is it the best idea? No, but it does work. Something like this I would not recommend getting if you're going to be using it as a NAS. This is a similarly spec PC. As you can see, it's a mini PC, and these have kind of went up in price over the last few months as people have started using them more and more for home lab as a replacement for Raspberry Pis. They're still relatively cheap, but the issue with them is this PC, for instance, I believe only has the availability of 3 hard drives or 3 storage devices. In that you can have you can have 2 NVMe drives, I believe, and 1 SATA drive. That's pretty good for a PC that is small. However, for a NAS, you may feel like you're lacking storage. Two NVMe drives, you could always put those in RAID, and then you could, get a small SATA drive and boot off of that, and that would be great for, say, TrueNAS, two 4 TB drives that are 2.5 inch. The issue there is that the only way you can really do 4 TB drives in that small of capacity is to get SSDs, and those are very expensive compared to spinning Rust. So it ends up being pretty non-cost efficient, I guess, in order to do that. So these are an option. However, they're not my first option. My first option would be something like this, where it's a small form factor PC similar to that. And these office PCs tend to sell for a lot less than, say, if it was a similar PC that was marketed towards gamers at the time. If it was marketed towards like gaming PCs and stuff, they tend to be a lot more expensive, even if they don't have the GPU. In order to install TrueNAS, the first thing we need to do is head over to the TrueNAS website, click on Get TrueNAS, and hit Download TrueNAS Scale, as that's the version of TrueNAS we're going to be using. Here, there's some recommendations on hardware that you would like to have, and there's some more details if you click the full hardware requirements. From here, all we need to do is sign up for the newsletter or press no thank you, I've already signed up. From there, you can hit Download Disable, and I've already done this, as you can see it up here. And from there, after you have it downloaded, we're going to go head over to the Ventoy website. Ventoy is my preferred way of booting ISOs these days, or images, as you don't have to have one USB per ISO like you used to have. You can have all of your ISOs on one USB, and you're able to boot it from there. You'll be presented with a menu, and then there you'll select whichever ISO you would like and boot it. Now on Arch, all I'm going to use is my favorite AUR installer to go ahead and install Ventoy. In my case, all I'm going to do is type PARU/S Ventoy. From here, it'll ask me for resolve dependencies. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and use the bin version, so I'm going to press 2, and then I'm just going to accept all the defaults here. Once this is done, I should have Ventoy installed. As you can see here where it says reinstalling, I already had this installed. However, that would be the same process for you installing it if you are also in Arch. From here, all we need to do is we can run sudo Ventoy GUI in order to get Ventoy's GUI. Now, I do believe you need to run this as sudo, as whenever you run this as non-sudo, you end up with a couple of issues. From here, all you have to do is select your device and press install. Once you've done that, it'll say the device will be formatted, all the data will be lost. Would you like to continue? Click OK. It'll double check, make sure that you are 100% okay with that. Press OK, and then you'll get a status bar, and once this is finished, you'll have Ventoy installed into this drive. Congratulations, Ventoy has been successfully installed to this device. Now I have Ventoy installed, and it is using MBR. In my case, I don't really want to use MBR, so we're going to go ahead and change that, and we're going to go up here to partition style and select GPT. From here, we're going to go ahead and hit update and hit OK. After this is done, now it should be on GPT, I believe. Oh, we have to press install, excuse me. Now it should be on GPT. I would prefer doing that over MBR. Yeah, there we go. Now we're on GPT. And that's all it is to use Ventoy. This Ventoy GUI works exactly the same on Windows. All you'd have to do on Windows is download the zip from Ventoy. And then once you've done that, you'll click on the exe. It'll pop up this box, and it'll work exactly the same as this did. Now that we have Ventoy set up, the only thing we have to do is move our ISO images over. In my case, I went ahead and downloaded Ubuntu Desktop just as another example, so you can see it in the menu whenever we go to boot. All we need to do is go ahead and hit copy, head over to Ventoy, and you're gonna have two partitions for Ventoy depending on how you have installed it. In my case, I have Ventoy EFI. That is not where we want to put our ISOs. We have one called Ventoy, and that is where we want to put our ISOs. From here, we just hit paste, and once those are copied over, we should be able to boot from any of those that we would like. Once the operation is completed, you should just have two ISOs in that USB stick. The next step is to actually install TrueNAS Scale. In order to do this, we're going to go ahead and boot our PC, and we're going to get to the boot menu. Sometimes this is F11 or F2 or delete, or there's quite a few different options. If you can't, you can always go to the inner setup, and once you're there and you're into there, you can select the boot device from inside of that. In our case, mine was F11, and then I'm going to go down here to where it says UEFI FAT USB disk 2.0 PMAP. And I know that this is my drive. All I need to do is press enter, and it should boot from it. Now, after it's boot from that, as you can see, I have both of the ISOs on here. If I wanted to, I could select Ubuntu and boot into Ubuntu's desktop. Or, in our case, we're going to be selecting TrueNAS Scale 2310.01. From here, we need to be able to select boot in normal mode, and this will boot it just like any other normal ISO. In here, we can go ahead and hit start TrueNAS Scale installation. And this may take a few seconds to load the ISO due to the speed of your USB drive. In my case, it tends to be pretty fast. Once it is started, you'll be presented with this screen that says console setup. In order to do this, we're going to go ahead and press install-upgrade. In here, we can select what drive we'd like to install TrueNAS Scale into. A note here, you do need to install TrueNAS Scale to another device other than the one that you're actually going to be using for storage. So in my case, I have 5 drives, one NVMe, and that's where we're going to be installing TrueNAS to. And then I have 4 hard drives. These 4 hard drives, I cannot install TrueNAS to, and I cannot use them for storage inside TrueNAS. Therefore, 128 gig SSD is more than enough storage for TrueNAS. After that, we're going to go ahead and press OK by pressing enter. After that, I have the option to do an upgrade because I already have TrueNAS installed, and I believe it will still give you the option even if you don't have TrueNAS installed. However, I'm going to go ahead and do fresh install, and we're going to go ahead and do format the boot device. This will get rid of everything on the boot device. Install in new boot environment will create another partition, I believe, and install next to. But in our case, we want to format it, so we're going to go ahead and press format. After that, it'll tell you that everything will be deleted, and whether or not you're okay with that. In my case, we are, so I'm going to go ahead and press yes. And here is a bit of a controversial thing. I made a video about this. This is the first video I made on my channel. And selecting root means you won't have any permission issues ever, and because everything will be running as root. However, I tend to like to do everything as admin user just because it is the best practice in order to have this deployed in, say, a business solution. And learning how to get around those permission issues can teach you quite a bit if you were to deploy this in a business solution. Some businesses will probably still run it as root user, but in my case, I do like to use administrative user just because it is a little bit more of a learning opportunity in my opinion. After that, we'll be presented with adding a password for our admin. In my case, I'm just going to set this as something simple because I will be reinstalling this later on my own time to make my final installation, since this is not typically how I run my NAS. After that, we're going to go ahead and press OK. And we should, we're going to be prompted with create 16 gigs of swap partition on the boot. If you don't have 16 gigs, that's fine. In my case, I have 120 gigs of storage and it's an NVMe, so it makes a ton of sense to go ahead and create the swap, because after the installation, which is normally only maybe 10 gigs, if that, all that extra storage on that drive is just going to waste, so I might as well use 16 gigs of it as swap. Once the installation is completed, you'll be presented with this screen saying that the TrueNAS installation on your drive has succeeded, and all you have to do from here is go ahead and press OK. And then from here, you need to go down to where it says reboot. This will reboot your machine, and I'd also suggest go ahead and pulling out that USB drive after you've pressed reboot. After you've done that, you will be rebooting into your TrueNAS Scale installation, and all you have to do at this screen is you can wait 10 seconds, or if you select something, you can as well. And you can also just go ahead and press enter to go ahead and get that started. Now, in my case, I am presented with the web interface could not be accessed. Please configure your network. The reason why this is because I have something set up called lag. And this is when I have 2 network ports set up so that they act as one, in that I can have 2 1 gigabits that now act as a 2 gigabit port, essentially. I went ahead and reverted that change and set it up so that I have DHCP just normally working like most of you would. That way it makes things a bit easier to follow along with. However, once you're at this screen, you can access your interface by going to the IP address that it has up here. All you need to do is head over to a browser and enter in https:// and then the IP address that your server is located at. I have went ahead and entered in the IP address of the server, and I'm going to go ahead and press enter. Whenever you do this, you will be warning potential security risk ahead. Go ahead and hit advanced and go ahead and hit accept the risk and continue. From here, it seems that I did not set the password, or I had selected the setup in user. So we're once again prompted with the administrative user or root user decision. In my case, I want to use administrative user as explained before. So I'm going to go ahead and type in the password for the admin user that I would like to have. So we're going to type that in both here and here. Once we've done that, we can go ahead and press sign in, and it'll go ahead and create us as the admin user. From here, we need to go ahead and make sure that we are actually getting updates. It says no updates available, so we can go ahead and assume that everything is working fine there. Also, we're going to go down here to system settings, go down to general settings, and in here we want to go ahead and make sure that everything is fine in here. The first thing I recommend changing is go ahead and go to localization and making sure you have your time zone set properly. You can type in this box or you can search for it in there. In my case, it's going to be New York. So after that, I'm going to go ahead and press save. Another thing that I like to go ahead and do is go to settings and go over here to web interface HTTP redirect to HTTPS. So that way it's always using HTTPS instead of HTTP. From that, you can go ahead and click OK, and we can go ahead and click confirm and continue. In my case, since I was already at HTTPS, it shouldn't make me relog in. However, if you were, you need to relog in. Actually, maybe it will. Nope, there it goes. Okay, cool. Another thing that you may need to do is head over here to network, and under the network tab, you may have to configure some things in here. That's kind of all up to you. And the other thing you can change in here is go to settings, and you can change your host name if you would like to change this to something else. And mine, I normally call my NAS star screen. So we're going to go ahead and call it star screen. And we're going to go ahead and press save. If you have DHCP servers and you have DNS setup or DHCP setup, then you should automatically inherit these. If not, you can go ahead and set these to whatever you would like. And you can also set your default gateway in here. After you have all that set, you can go ahead and press save. Now that we have all the basic setup done for TrueNAS, we can head over to storage to go ahead and get that set up. In order to do this, we're going to head to the storage tab and we're going to hit create pool. Recently, this menu has changed. So if you are new to TrueNAS, this, won't affect you. However, if you've been using TrueNAS for a few years, this is a bit odd to figure out the first time. So in order to do this, we're going to hit name and we're going to go ahead and type in tank 0. After that, we're going to press next. This is where it's changed and where I found it a bit confusing at first. For this, we're going to be selecting our mirror as our layout and my personal layout. After that, I'm going to go ahead and hit manually select disk. From here, I'm going to go ahead and press add and it will add us a mirror. From here, all we have to do is drag and drop our disk that we would like to have in this mirror. In my case, I would like to have similarly named drives in similar named places. And this is because 2 of these drives are gold, 2 of these are red. So firstly, I want to go ahead and move the 4000s. So this one and this one over, and then we're going to hit slave selected. After that, we're going to go ahead and press next. And we're going to go ahead and press next for all these optionals because I don't need any of these optionals. This is for a spare. The next one is for a cache drive. The next one is for a metadata. The next one is for dedupe. And then the last one is for review. This is going to tell you all the information that you need to know in order to do this. From here, we can go ahead and create, hit click confirm, and press continue. This will go ahead and create our storage. Now, as you can see, I've created my tank 0, and as you can see, it has some help desk issues. This is because these 2 drives are the old gold drives, and I use these mostly for testing. I don't necessarily use these for storing data. These are mostly just here to play around with. After that, we're going to go ahead and hit add to pool, and we're going to hit a new pool, add disk, and we're going to go through this process again. We're going to name this tank 1. We're going to select a mirror layout once again. We're going to select manually. And in this case, it went ahead and picked the only 2 disks we have, so we can just hit save. You can also automatically let this do this by selecting width, hitting 2, and then selecting the number of VDEVs that you would like. And then once again, we're just going to press next through all of these optional things that we don't really have to set up. After that, we're going to go ahead and press create pool, press confirm, and press continue. Once again, we'll be presented with the message that says your storage has been created successfully. And then down here, you'll see that I have my tank 0, which is my production drive. Now, the next thing that we need to do in order to set up a VM on TrueNAS is to head over here and grab Ubuntu server. In order to do this, I just headed over to ubuntu.com/downloads-server, and I'm going to go ahead and grab the LTS version. After clicking that, it should pop up and allow us to download that. Once this is downloaded, we'll move on to the next step. Now that we've downloaded Ubuntu Server, we can go ahead and head back over to TrueNAS. Inside TrueNAS, we can go ahead and head down to the Virtualization tab and click Add. In here, we can select our OS, which is going to be Linux, and go ahead and give this a name. Much like in the last set of videos, we're going to call this Docker, as this is going to be replacing the Docker that you could follow along with in the last videos. Down here at password, we're going to go ahead and set the password and press Next. This next menu will say virtual CPUs, cores, and threads. This was a bit confusing when I first got started, as cores, threads, and virtual CPUs all sound very much like the same thing. Virtual CPUs is the sockets, how many sockets that they are available to the PC. Cores is how many cores you would actually like to slot per CPU socket. And then threads are how many threads per core. So in our case, since we're going to be setting this in a weird way, we're going to be setting this to 2 cores, and we're going to set this to 4 threads. Once we've done that, we can go down here to press CPU model, and we're going to go ahead and select host pass-through, as that is my preferred way of doing this. And we're going to set 6GB. And that should set us to 6 gigs. Once we've done that, there's a couple of other options in here, as you can set some other things, such as minimum memory size, which is how much minimum memory that the guest will have. And there's a couple of other options like setting host to a custom mode or setting it to a host model. In our case, we're just going to be using host pass-through because I find that to be the simplest and the easiest to work with. From here, we're going to go ahead and hit next, and we can set up our disk. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and set this to 100 gigs as I did in the previous tutorials. And I'm going to be storing this on tank 0 just because I don't really care about this container, as this is only going to be using, or this VM, as this is only going to be used for this video. After that, we're going to go ahead and press next. And then we're going to attach it to a NIC. In our case, we're going to attach it to the NIC that the PC is currently using. You may only have one option here. Most of you will probably only have one option here. After that, we can press next, and we can select our installation media. In order to grab our media, we need to go ahead and hit upload new image file and choose a file. Inside of here, we're going to head over to downloads, and we're going to select Ubuntu live server. Once we've done that, we can press open and press upload. This may take a few minutes, but it will upload our ISO over to TrueNAS, and then we'll be able to boot from it. That took about 60-ish seconds, something like that. And now that we have that, we can go ahead and make sure that this is selected and go ahead and press next. In here, this is going to allow us to select a GPU. In our case, we don't need to do that. We're just going to press next, and it'll confirm our options. This will say, give us all of our information about our VM. After that, we can go ahead and press save, and it should go ahead and create our VM. And now that our VM is created, all we need to do in order to start it is go ahead and click the start button. And then we can head over here down to at the bottom to display. You may get a pop-up asking you whether or not you're okay with it. I'm going to go ahead and hit allow pop-ups, and I'm going to go ahead and enter the password for the VM that we had entered a moment ago. Now that we've done that, we are connected through Spice, and all we have to do is click over here, and we should be able to select whatever we need to inside of here. We can hit try or install Ubuntu Server, and we can walk through the process of installing Ubuntu Server. From here, we can go ahead and continue our installation, and all we need to do is go ahead and select our language. I have had an issue where at this screen, if I have chosen update to the new installer, it seems to, on the next screen, go ahead and reboot for some reason. So I'm going to go ahead and skip updating to new installer, and I'm going to just go ahead and continue without the update. From here, we'll have a option to pick our keyboard layout, and I'm going to go ahead and press continue because it's already on my defaults. Here is the base version of the install. You can select Ubuntu Server Minimalized if you would like to for a small footprint, or Ubuntu Server. Either one, it's up to you. Personally, I just normally go with Ubuntu Server. Press done. Here, I already have this set up because I have DHCP set up, and you can set this to a static IP address if you would like. I would recommend personally setting this to a static address. However, since this is not going to be around for very long, I'm just going to leave it how it is for my setup. But a static address or using a DHCP reservation is preferred. From here, we can go and press done. If you have a proxy, this is where you would enter it. And now it's going to go ahead and configure our archive mirrors. This mirror location pass test, so it says that we're good to go. From here, we can go press done. Here we can go ahead and set this up as an LVM if we would like to. I see no reason not to, so I'm just going to go ahead and go down here and press done. From here, it'll just give us a review of our disk, and we can go ahead and press done and continue. Now we can set up our user. In my case, this will be Percolator, and then the server name will be test. The username will be Percolator, and then the password will just be something simple that I can remember for doing this tutorial. This is going to say upgrade to Ubuntu Pro. You can look into this if you would like. I don't really see the point in it currently, so we're good. We're gonna go ahead and press continue. Install OpenSSH. I'm gonna go ahead and select this just in case I decide that I need this for later in the tutorial. You do not have to, however, I prefer it. Go ahead and press done. These are going to install as snaps. I highly recommend not installing any of these as snaps. I prefer to install everything that I possibly can outside of a snap, just installing it via the normal package manager. Snaps are great, but I don't prefer them when I don't have to use them for something. So I'm just gonna go ahead and down here and press done. Then it'll go ahead and install the system. This may take a few minutes, so I'll be back once that gets done. Now, in my case, after that had completed, I had to refresh the page in order to be able to move around and select reboot. If this happens to you, go ahead and refresh the page. It'll prompt you for your password again, and then you can select reboot. This is something I have noticed since I have been using TrueNAS Scale virtualization, that sometimes you have to refresh the page during installations in order to get certain things to be able to be selected. It's a bit of a weird thing with TrueNAS Scale, but all you have to do is select reboot from here. It'll ask you to please remove your installation media and then press enter. We cannot do that currently, so we're just going to go ahead and press enter. Now, as you can see, we end up in an issue where we are somewhat in a boot loop, where we're just going to boot back into the media. That's why it asks you to remove it. In order to do this, we're going to go ahead and head over to TrueNAS Scale, and we're going to go ahead and log in as admin. Now that we've logged in as admin, all we have to do is head over to this, go to devices, head up to CD-ROM, and we're going to go ahead and press delete, force delete, delete device, and it'll say you must stop the VM before you can do this. This is why I said you can't really hit reboot, because you have to kind of do it in between. So we're going to go ahead and hit stop, force after timeout. This will mean after 90 seconds, it will force it to stop. So we're going to go ahead and wait for that to stop. Another option we have here is to just go ahead and go over here to power off, and that will immediately shut down the device. From here, we can go to devices, head to CD-ROM as we did before, and go ahead and press delete, as this is where our ISO is located. Now we can head back to virtualization, and we can turn on Docker or our VM. Once that is done, we can go ahead and go to display, and we can confirm that it is booting properly now, and it's not booting into our flash drive once again, or our CD-ROM in that case. In the case of it being a VM, it's not moving back to the media, is what I'm trying to say here. Now, as you can see, we've booted into the server, and it'll go ahead and do our init keys and generate our SSH keys. After that's done, we can go ahead and log into it, which I believe it is now. Yeah. From here, the rest of the tutorials on my channel should be able to be followed along with pretty much exactly, minus the stuff about Proxmox. As now we have a VM setup, which you should be able to follow along with, and we have a NAS setup, which you should be able to follow along with. The idea is that you should be able to do most of the things that you would be able to do on two boxes on one using TrueNAS Scale, and it's pretty much out of the box. As you can see, we didn't have to do any kind of special setup or anything odd in order to make this work. All we did is use TrueNAS Scale in the exact way that is intended to be used, and it worked out completely fine. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell if you really want to see all the videos that I post in the future. And this is Percolator signing out. TrueNAS Scale is a very capable hypervisor and NAS solution, and it is very good because it is out of the box, has everything that you need set up, and can work all as one device. However, it is not my preferred setup. My preferred setup is Proxmox due to it having a little bit better support for virtualization, in my opinion. Next week, we will be working on setting up Proxmox in a very similar way as we have done TrueNAS. Instead of forcing it to do virtualization as we did with TrueNAS and it not working amazingly, but working well enough to get along, we're going to be doing the same thing with Proxmox, but we're going to make Proxmox into a bit of a NAS.